Well, there's a couple things that you can always count on to really resonate with potential voters. One, slamming the media. Two, Wall Street fat cats and all the New York City sinful values that go along with it. Except tonight, when it got brought up on stage, didn't go over that well with Donald Trump. Here's Ted Cruz and Donald Trump in the 6th GOP debate, the first of 2016.
You know, I think most people know exactly what New York values are.
I am from New York.
Well, you're from New York, so you might not. But I promise you, in the state of South Carolina, they do. And listen, there are many, many wonderful, wonderful working men and women in the state of New York. But everyone understands that the values in New York City are socially liberal or pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage, focused around money and the media. You know, the concept of New York values is not that complicated to figure out. Not too many years ago, Donald did a long interview with Tim Russert. And in that interview, he explained his views on a whole host of issues that were very, very different from the views he's describing now. And his explanation, he said, look, I'm from New York. That's what we believe in New York. Those aren't Iowa values, but this is what we believe in New York. And so that was his explanation.
New York is a great place. It's got great people. It's got loving people, wonderful people. When the World Trade Center came down, I saw something that no place on earth could have handled more beautifully, more humanely than New York. You had two 110-story buildings come crashing down. I saw them come down. Thousands of people killed. And the cleanup started the next day, and it was the most horrific cleanup probably in the history of doing this and in construction. I was down there, and I've never seen anything like it. And the people in New York fought and fought and fought, and we saw more death and even the smell of death. Nobody understood it, and it was with us for months, the smell, the air. And we rebuilt downtown Manhattan, and everybody in the world watched, and everybody in the world loved New York and loved New Yorkers. And I have to tell you, that was a very insulting statement that Ted made.
And, you know, it got pointed out online that a lot of people who back after 9/11 said we are all New Yorkers are now the ones who are criticizing New York City values. It seems like it should be an easy target. But it's true, when you take the time to characterize what New York is, a lot of Americans who live in other places have visited New York, have come to New York and had great experiences. Do you think that that was a failure on Ted Cruz's part, Steve?
Yeah, I think that he might have been expecting a different kind of response, where there's another sort of response that he could have had, which is that Ted Cruz has been in New York trying to raise money from some of these people, and maybe he thought maybe they were throwing that back in his face. But you had this really heartfelt response from Trump. And you don't get a lot of heartfelt responses from Trump. And it's really interesting that he sort of, like you said, laid his cards on the table on this one, and the audience ate that one up. I mean, it was a really good response.
And by the way, then later in the debate, it got brought up, oh, well, there's not that many conservatives who are in New York City, and the New York Times, which got slammed as well tonight, as not being that reliable, fact-checked that and came up with 613 or so thousand Republicans registered in Manhattan alone. So not a tiny amount. Certainly they're not the dominant party in New York City, but
this is really an unforced error. There's no reason he had to do this, go on this extended rant against New York City and insult, the people of the largest. But he's trying to take down
Donald Trump.
He's trying to take down Donald Trump, but guess what? He went to Princeton, a suburb of New York City. He went to Harvard. His wife works at Goldman Sachs. He has raised millions of dollars in New York City. So why you would open yourself up to that kind of accusation?
This is a traditional Republican line, right? So it's right out of campaign orthodoxy. You want to do something, throw New York under the bus, because all Republicans know they're not like New Yorkers. And so what happens is you use the old rules in a very new game. We've said this over and over throughout the course of all these debates. This cycle is different than all the rest. Those old lines, throw them in the garbage. They're not going to work against Donald Trump, and they're not going to work with the constituencies that are out there.
When was the last time you had a presidential candidate who is a New Yorker from birth, but is attractive to conservatives? When was the last time that happened?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, well, it's been a long time, right?
But
And
this
he
is-
really liked his guns.
And he
so-
really liked his gun. No social issues tonight. Very little talk about the domestic agenda. Hardly any mentions at all about Barack Obama and the State of the Union only 2 nights ago. This is a really interesting game. We talked about who's going to win for first and who's going to win for third at the start of this. I think the fight for first was really interesting. Trump versus Cruz, right? With Carson completely out of the picture. Fight for third, boring. Nothing really exciting happening amongst the undercard there.